Hi everyone. In this tutorial I want to show you how to create a modal which will fade in from the left. And you can also change it. You can make it fade in from the top or from the right. So let me just create my files. I'll start off with creating index.html and a style.css and also a main.js. And then in the index.html, I create the boilerplate fade in modal, and I also link to the CSS file as well as the JavaScript file. And then I create my modal. We also want obviously we want a button that we can click on. So and then we also want to have a close button inside of the model. So p.close modal times, which is basically a times sign, and then we can try to open this with live server. So basically here it is. And then what we want to do is basically we want to style our modal first and foremost. So I can width can be like 60 VW, height can be about 60 VH. We also want a background color. Like that, maybe a box shadow, like that, and then we want to center it, so maybe we can use flexbox on the body. So width 100, height 100, display flex, justify content center, and align items center as well. No, it doesn't really work. I think it's because of the fact that we have the open modal. Maybe I'll do that. I'll make it to position absolute. I'll make this related, and then our button open modal will be positioned absolutely, and the reason for that is that we want this to be outside of the normal flow of the entire page, because right now it takes up, or actually we can do that. We can do it like this as well. We can do flex direction column, yeah, and we can make reverse maybe. So I want to have it at the bottom, so we can use either reverse, or if you do column reverse, it will basically reverse the entire order of the elements. So now we have it. Maybe I want some margin top, like that. We don't need this. Usually you would want to avoid using position absolute. Also I want to change this, the close modal. Close modal font size can be like 3.5 gram maybe. Oh, actually, text align center. I forgot something, but I don't want any margins, you know, because right now we have like margins that are automatically added by the browsers. We want to remove that, so we can use the global selector. What this line does basically, it's this line, what it does is basically that it makes so that the padding of each element or of every element will be included in the total width size. Because if you don't add this, if we then maybe let's say we have an element with the width of 100%, and we also add padding on top of that, then it will be, the total width will be more than 100%. So it will basically overlap and overflow, which is really not what we want. We want to have another behavior. Basically, we want to make sure that the padding is always included in the total width, which is actually quite obvious, and I don't get the point why they haven't made this standard in the browsers. So I always add this at the top. So now you can see that we have everything at the top. We have no added margin basically. So now I want to actually what I want is I want to have some padding on the modal, obviously. Padding like 3 rem, maybe 2. Okay. I also want some margin like that. Actually, I think I have to add the HTML with 100%, height 100% as well. Yeah, that was the problem basically. So I don't need this actually, I can remove it. The thing is, I wanted to have the modal centered. So I used this, but basically these 100% of the height is relative to its parent, and the parent of the body is the HTML tag. And the HTML tag, the HTML tag by default, it doesn't have 100%. I think it's auto. I think that's the default in the browser. So we want to change that to 100% so that it basically takes up the entire height of the entire browser basically. So now this is relative to the height of the HTML tag, and therefore when we use the flexbox and we center everything on the page, this will automatically be centered on the page. So that's what we want basically. Let me just add the cursor pointer as well. So open modal, close modal, cursor pointer like that. So now obviously we have another issue, because now this is like, it's display block by default. So like I can click anywhere on the whole entire row. So we can change this by adding a width to the close modal like this, maybe like 30px or something, and then we will have to, or actually let me just try this, maybe it works. Display inline block, maybe. No, it doesn't. Okay, let me just try to. Okay, I think I have to add this and remove this. So basically now it's like 30 px. It was just like an estimation, but this will make it center, and now you can't click here basically. And also this one has the cursor pointer. So now what we want to do is I want to make it fade in from the top basically. So what I can do for that is I can start off by, let me just show you how the modal will look like when it's taken out of the viewport. So if I use transform translate, which is basically what we want to use here, we want to move the element from being outside of the browser and make it enter the browser basically. So if I use translate y, which will move it vertically, I set it to -100 VH. You see, now it's basically at the top. And if I inspect this, let me just inspect this, wait, like that. If I just inspect it, where do we have it? The modal. Yeah, there it is. So now we see that basically the modal is like outside of the browser. So if you want to bring it in, look at the translate down here at the bottom. When I decrease this, let me just show you. You see, when I decrease it, it basically enters. You see, and when it's at 0, that's when it is at the initial position of the element. So our goal now is to animate it so that basically we want to have it at -100 VH, and when we click on it, we want to animate it so it becomes 0 VH. That's our goal right now. So let me add transition, because we want it to be smooth. Basically the fading in should be smooth. So like if I now just change this to 0, look, you see, it just appears like it fades in. It's like smooth. So look at it. Yeah, it's actually quite. Let us make it 5, so we can see the animation like that. Wait, I'm sorry. Like this. You see, it's really smooth. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to click on this button, and when we do that, we want to change this to being to show basically. So we want to set this to 0. So let's go to the JavaScript. Obviously I just want to make sure that it is connected. So test, there it is connected. So now what I can do is basically I can create a event listener. So document.create selector dot open modal dot add event listener, click, and we want to create a function called show modal. So now if I create that modal function, basically what we want to do is we also want to keep track of the state of the modal. So if it's opened, if it's displayed or not. So we can create a variable for that. So let displayed modal be set to false initially, because it's not displayed, so it's false. And then when we click on the button, basically we want to check if it is false. Then we want to show it. We want to show the modal, and we can do that by setting the transform translate property to 0 VH. So then we will basically reach out to the modal like that. Style transform translate y VH like that. And then what we also want to do, we want to change the variable to true, because now it is displayed. So displayed modal is set to true. Else, or actually I can change this to toggle, because I want to use the same function for both purposes. So basically, else we want to do the opposite. So now I can just duplicate this line and move it to this line, and I can set it back to -100. And also I want to reset the variable to false, because now we're closing it. And also I can add this add event listener. This event listener, I can add it to the close modal as well, like that. So let me just try this now. You see, when I just clicked on it, actually, if I click on it again, it will toggle basically. So all we can do is we can either create like two separate functions, so that this will only work as a open modal thing, and not as a toggle modal. But what I want to do is actually I want to keep it like this. I find it to be better, so I will just change the name so that it's toggle modal. So it's quite easy. Actually, when I click on this one as well, it moves. If I however click on this one, it won't change. Nothing changes basically. So this is what we want. Actually, another thing that I want is I want a backdrop. A backdrop is basically a shadow behind this. And in some cases, you also want to make sure that the user is able to press the escape key if the user wants to get out of the modal, basically. So we should provide the user with these features. So I want to create a backdrop. It's very easy actually. On the body, I will just add a div with the class of backdrop, like that. And then I create it right here. So backdrop, I want this to be covering the entire page, the entire browser. So I want it to be width 100, 100, I think it's like that. No, actually, I don't want. I want 100%, not viewport width, and also the height should be 100 VH. And the reason for that is basically also I want it to be position fixed, top 0, left 0, and I want it to be relative to the body, so this will be position relative. So the reason for that is that we just saw that it disturbs the normal flow of the page. So what we want to do is also obviously we want to add a background color which will be somewhat transparent, partially transparent. So RGB like that, basically 0.0, 0.4 or maybe 0.5. So now it's actually quite dark, so maybe like this. No, I mean maybe like this. So basically what we want to do is the same thing. Actually, it's quite different. We don't want to make it to fade it in. We just want it to disappear. So like display none. So right now, if we have display none, it's not visible at all. It doesn't really show on the page. If we, however, change it to block, which is the standard, the default, then it will show. And I also want to make this clickable. So I want to add the toggle modal. I want to add this to the toggle modal basically. So it should be none initially. And then when we go to the toggle modal, I want to, if it's not displayed, I want to show it. I will basically, I can just say document .create selector backdrop style display block. I want to show it basically, and here I want to remove it basically from the page. And then I can add a event listener. So document .create selector backdrop. Basically I can just duplicate the line. I'm quite lazy. So like this, backdrop. Let me try it. Yeah. The problem, if like you see right here, the problem is that it's kind of covering the entire thing. Let me just show you if I think it is. Let me just try to change the color of this to maybe like teal or something. I want to make sure that it's behind it. Anyways, I think in some cases it's like behind the it actually pops up like above the modal. So make sure that the backdrop is above everything else on the page, but not really above the modal itself. So we can just add a z index to like 10, and then the modal we can add it to be 20, so that no matter what, this will always be behind it. So now when I click on the shadow, so to say, actually it's quite light. Let me change it to like 5. Yeah, now it's better, I guess. So now we have the shadow. And one last thing is, I actually want to make sure that we can basically use the escape key. So it should not only be with clicking. Like if the user has a desktop or something, he sits in front of a computer basically with a keyboard, we want to provide the feature so that the person can basically use the escape key to close the modal as well. So what we can do is we can create like obviously this will be attached to the window, add event listener. So key up, basically when the user like presses the key and when he or she releases it, that's when the events will be triggered. Toggle modal like this. Actually, I think we will have to create like a close modal for this, because otherwise it will be toggled like each time. Or actually, no, I don't think we have to. We can just add it to the second else block. So what we want to do right now is we want to, I have to look this up actually because I don't remember the key code for the escape key in JavaScript. It's 27. Okay, so right now I want to add the event object because we will need it right now. And I want to make sure that if the type of the event is a click, then we only want to show the modal. We don't want to show anything else. So I will have to add a nested if statement. If event of type is click, then I want this to happen, basically, because I don't want anything to happen if it's the same functionality. Basically, I don't want anything to happen when we open the modal. I only want to be able to close the modal with the escape key. So here I can check this and I can say if the event type is basically key up, and the event key code is 27, then I want to be able to close it. So let me try this now. Yeah, so right now it works. It's as simple as that. When I click on this and we have the modal, basically right now this is set to true because we opened it. If I press every key on the keyboard, nothing will happen. But if I press on the escape key right now, I press on it like now, it gets away, it gets removed basically. So this is working. The only downside to this method or this way to create it is that this function is triggered like multiple times, like each time, every time when I click on anything, basically on any key on my keyboard, this will get triggered, and it's not very good for performance issues. So we can just console log it. So event type let me just show you. So right now, if I, as soon as I click on anything, you can see right down here, it gets triggered every time when I press on any key on the keyboard, which is a problem actually. So what I would do is basically I would wrap this entire thing in a, or maybe I can just create like a separate function for this. Or no, actually, it doesn't really. When we think about it, this entire function isn't very heavy, so to say. So it doesn't really matter. And so hi everyone. I just want to make a short clarification about what I said before. So what I said was that basically we want to check if the event type is click, or it is key up, and now it should work. Let me just try this out. Yeah, it works. One thing I want to show you guys is that what I said last time, it was that I added this box shadow. I meant to add this one actually, like that, basically, so that the backdrop gets a little bit darker. That's one thing that I want to clarify. Another thing is that basically that we can refactor this a little bit, so we can just have this in one if statement, so we don't have any nested statements like that, and we can remove this nested one. And one thing I want to show you guys, just to clarify, is that even though it is true that this will get triggered every time I press a key, and I can show you by console logging out the event type. So every time I click on anything, this will get triggered. That is true, and it's very difficult to avoid that because we want to keep track of everything that the user does. So this will get triggered, and I didn't really find another solution to this. If you have any solutions, just put it in the comments below. But actually, one thing is that if I try to console log it out inside of this block, then we know that it won't trigger. So this whole block doesn't get triggered, and the only thing that gets triggered, let me just take this and paste it out and console log it out right here. It only gets triggered like once, it only gets triggered once, and that is when this condition is fulfilled. So essentially, this isn't like a bad solution, because it doesn't really affect the performance issue in that way, because it just checks the two conditions, and it doesn't run the entire code of the blocks. It only runs this once this condition is fulfilled. So I just wanted to point that out, that this isn't a bad solution in the sense that it affects the performance of our app or something, because it doesn't. So that's everything that I want to mention in this short little video, and I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.